Hi, welcome to Hacker Lab. We're a co-working makerspace in the Sacramento area, and let's take a tour. So this half of the building is the co-working space. Just to give you a broad layout, over here we have a little kitchenette, coffee makers, microwaves, refrigerator, all the normal stuff. Little zone for eating, socializing. In the middle here, in the back you see all those private desks, public desks. Those are for open co-working. If you're a member, you can sit where you please and work on what you need to work on. On this side and then on the back there, you'll see some private offices. We rent those out to different people who want a little space to call their own. And then we've got a couple conference rooms and some small computers over there. Welcome to the makerspace. We have lots of equipment around here, lots of really cool stuff. All right, so hand tool wall. You'll see this wonderful assemblage here, lots of magnet racks. Biggest thing to remember here is if you use something, put it back when you're done. This is a shared space and we like to keep the tools somewhat organized. So over here you'll see chisels, files, Phillips head screwdriver slotted, vice grips, cutters, all sorts of different stuff. And then moving down here, we've got this red tool chest which has all sorts of bits in it, drill bits, weird router bits, wrenches, sockets, that kind of stuff. Above it is our power tool wall. We have a million different types of handheld drills, all with a different manufacturer, and so our assembly of battery charging stations is underneath here. Over here we've got a drill press and some fasteners, screws, nuts, bolts, just kind of fair game, kind of organized, useful stuff, good to have, yeah. This is the jewelry studio area. We have a whole jewelry lab with all sorts of tools for doing small, intricate metal work. 4 workstations over here with magnet racks for all of these small, delicate items. You'll notice things like rotary tools. We've got a normal Dremel over there and a slightly higher powered one over here. Little pliers of all types, hammers, ball peens, small chiseling, I don't know what those are called. These things have a name. I'm not sure what that name is, but it's a name. In the corner, some scrap metal, small saws. Back here, we have a small centrifuge for doing casting. We're still setting this part of it up, but it'll be a cool one once we're done. And then on this other side, another workbench, which some buffing and polishing wheels, a small metal cutting bandsaw, which is surprisingly powerful, it turns out. A little smasher, a roller, and yeah, that's the gist of this. Welcome to the photography studio. There's a lot of people in our space who make things that they're going to sell, and if you want to sell it online, it's nice to have a place to take pictures of it. So we've got a lot of stuff in this room, all geared around photography, basics, stands, lighting rigs, that kind of stuff, lighting boxes. We've got a computer over here. It does have Creative Cloud installed on it, but you've got to use your own account. We've got some strobe lights, some lenses, more and more lighting rigs. And then up here we have some various backdrops. We've got the blue, the white. The more you roll it down, the better it gets. Green screen, and then a kind of smaller setup over here with a lot of the same stuff. So this room has 2 purposes. It's the electronics lab and the 3D printing studio. So over here in the electronics lab, we have all sorts of test and measurement equipment, places to work on small projects, little soldering rigs. Then on the back wall here, we've got a ton of components, resistors, capacitors, whatever you could want. Lots more components up top, little oscilloscopes, function generators, small working tools. And then over here are the 3D printers. We have a few different types. These ones on the bottom, the big black and green ones, are kind of the workhorses, the Lulzbot Taz's. Fantastic machines, huge build volume, amazing. Above are the MP Select Minis, the monoprices. They do a pretty good job, surprisingly from their size. And then on the end here is the super fancy one. We've got a carbon fiber inlay printer, so it will actually mix a unbroken strand of carbon fiber into your print where you chose for it to be to provide some reinforcement. Super cool printer if you want to get really serious about strong parts. So this is the back corner area where we do storage. For the longest time we kind of fought against wanting to store things here because This should be the workspace, not the storage place. But it turns out people building things want a place to store things, so we gave in. We've got these cages out for rental to different people. Sac City's got a cage right here. Talk to Tom over with the MAKR program if you want access to it. The rest of these are all different folks within our space who've reserved their own private space for storing their stuff. Yeah, brilliant. So this is the wood shop. There's a lot of stuff in here. So we'll just kind of go through and I'll tell you what each piece of equipment is. This is the jointer. If you want to put an edge on something, join things together. It's a fantastic piece of equipment. Compound miter saw. Think of it like a deli slicer for wood, except not thin. You want to chop a bunch of things really quickly. It's a good tool to use. Sanders. We've got a belt sander, another belt sander, and then a spindle sander right here. There's a little Makita scroll saw in the back corner there for, think of it like a really tiny band saw, except instead of running in a circle, it just goes up and down and reciprocates really quick. Over here, we've got a couple lathes. So if you want to do wood turning, we've got this bigger Grizzly, and then a smaller jet, and then there is even one smaller jet somewhere around here. But these are great for making table legs. There's people who do bowls, on the smaller one, pens, all sorts of weird stuff like that. Moving over here, big dust extraction system we're putting in. It'll be really cool. Then we have a planer. So you have a piece of wood and it needs to be flatter, but you need to take off more material than sanding would do. This has some fast spinning cylindrical blades that will knock wood off the top. Over here, we've got a bandsaw, bigger than the one in the metal shop, more for wood. Super useful, really fun. And then another sander, and then behind you, the last thing is the table saw. So this is a fun table saw. It's a saw stop, if you're not familiar with that. Super fancy table saw. It has some electronics in there, and it does capacitive sensing in the blade. So if anything conductive touches it, whether that's a finger or a staple, it throws a hunk of metal into the blade and drops it under the table and saves your fingers. So super cool piece of equipment right here. All right, so one of the biggest pieces of equipment in our space over here, the ShopBot. It's a CNC router. So if you're familiar with a normal router, like this tiny one we have over here on the little router table, this is that same piece, or that same spinning end flipped upside down, bolted here, and then put on 2.5 axis control. So this whole gantry moves along rails back and forth, and then this part will move left and right, and it can do a little bit of plunge, about 6 inches. And so with that, you get milling into wood with very high precision. You'll notice all these signs that are all over the space, and the tool walls, those are all done on this piece of equipment, but really this is limited by your imagination. You can get really fancy with this. So super, super awesome tool. All right, so now we have the metalworking area, and this is more for larger metal items as comparison to the jewelry studio, which is very small metal things. So in the beginning area over here, we have an amazing bender. That's if you have some tube stock, so think square tube or tubes of steel, you can bend them very precisely on here. Next, we have different cutting tools. So that would be a drill press if you need to cut a hole into something, a horizontal bandsaw. This will cut through very big chunks of metal. A chop saw, which is similar to the wood chop saw, but for metal. And then working over here, we have some sheet metal working equipment. So we've got a notcher, a brake, and a shear. So if you have small pieces of sheet metal and you want to shape form them, take notches out of them, these are fantastic resources for that. Over here we have our welders. So 3 main setups. We have a MIG welder, which is the normal wire feed welding. Honestly, it feels like hot glue gun, but with metal. It's pretty cool. Then we have an oxyacetylene machine. Out of order right now. This is probably the single most dangerous thing in the space. And then in the back here, we have a TIG welder and a layup table. So if you wanted to do aluminum or really weird metals, this is kind of your go-to. TIG welding is an art that takes a long time to master, but once you get good, it's really amazing. And then over here at the end, lastly but not leastly, we do have a manual milling machine. This is a manual version of the Tormach CNC mill. We have an X, Y, and Z plane. You could put chunks of metal on there, register them, and then cut out what parts you want to cut out. You just do it with dials instead of with a computer. And this is our laser cutter room. We have a couple different lasers, two of the big ones here, a smaller one behind you. This is the one that we'll focus on, even though they all do very similar things. So it's a laser cutter. It uses a laser to cut through things, mostly acrylic, some safe plastics and wood, but also some weirder things like fabric and leather and other materials that are kind of thin. You can do cardboard, paper, all sorts of stuff. So the gist of it is technically CNC in that it's controlled by a computer through numbers, but it's much easier to learn than some of the 3D things because it's very 2D. The general idea is in the back, you can't see it, but there's a giant glass tube that is the laser. Shoots a laser over here into this corner, bounces off a mirror, hits this, and then bounces off one final mirror to go down into whatever you put on this bed. So you can do designs on the computer in CAD, or you could use Adobe Illustrator or Inkscape, lots of different 2D drawing tools. Use that as a pattern for the laser to trace, and it will cut out stuff. So it's cool. All right, well, thanks for joining us on that tour. We hope you got a little bit of an insight into what it is we do here. I know we're in a weird time right now where it's really hard to do things in person, so we're trying to replicate some of that in-person experience through video. And I would love for all of you to be able to come down here at some point in time, hopefully in the future. We'll see how things go, but that's just Packer Lab. I'm Niall. Feel free to ping me anytime.